Good evening and welcome to November 4th, ICC HenChess Banter Blitz. So what do we got on tap tonight? Still continuing with the bishop pair, we're going to look at a great game by Grandmaster Anthony Miles. He was England's first Grandmaster. We'll see a game by Ponomarev, who I think was very briefly, FIDE world champion for a few years. And then we'll see a game by Sergei Tivyakov, world recognized authority. So we got some super GMs on tap with some beautiful examples. Oh, and we also have a game, I think, from Linier Dominguez. So, let's see how it's looking. The audio seems to be okay. The video seems to be okay. What are the odds? And we are here in South Florida, which is normally the Sunshine State, but a little bit of rain through Saturday, off and on. Or as it says, partly sunny. Zevich. Hey, good to see you. Let's see. I guess we could do /open, see if anyone wants to get in a game or two. And if not, otherwise we can just move on to the presentation. Zevich, where are you from, dude? I think I knew it one time and I forgot. Barcelona. Aha. So yeah, I think one of the games we're going to look at today is Dominguez. Oh, Foxy Openings. Okay, kick it off with a Foxy Openings challenge. Now, of course, oh, I'm white, duh. So anyway, what happened here? Oh, he's white. Okay. What to play? Let's say we're stupid and we play G6. We don't know any better. Okay. Now, dare we play the Norwegian rat? Well, why not? Yep, accepting the challenge. That makes sense. And this is what I call the caveman attack. Full pedal to the metal. And I like to go ahead and get this guy up there just to put pressure on him before he slots that bishop in on G6. Now we could think about D5. We could also think about D6. Now play becomes a bit of a trench warfare, if you will. Now, what am I going to do with all my pizzas? My pieces? Is Queen B3 too much of a... Queen to D7 is a move you'd only see in the comic books. The idea is to put pressure on the G4 pawn and make him commit. Oh man, I should have known. He just sacrifices it. Should have known. He just... First opportunity. Seriously, dude? Okay. Wow. Meowza, did not expect that. What happens? Well, he's offering me more pawns. I'm gonna gorge myself on these pawns. That was probably one too many. I should not have taken that one. Yeah, now he's just developing and he's going to get the file. This could be trouble. This could be trouble. Yeah, I took one too many pawns there. Now I'm going to have problems. There's a good case of changing our mind. Originally I told myself that I was going to play bishop g7 and king over, but then I chickened out. I think, as they used to say in the Old West, it's getting to be about time for me to get out of Dodge. Yeah, I think I probably took one too many pawns there. Ah, shoot. Well, that sucks. I just got my bishop trapped. What was I thinking? Yep, good move. Offered trade queens. That makes sense. Yep, I definitely made an epic fail out of this, although I think the position was pretty much okay before I fumbled the ball. Ay, 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 ay. So actually, though, I do have 2 pawns for the pizza. Not the end of the world. I mean, it's not recommended that you play like this, but it's not the end of the world. Now the good thing is, as far as I can tell, his queen doesn't have any penetration points. So let's move these guys up the board a little. Okay, he pinned me. Did we just pluck a 3rd pawn? Holy cow. This could actually somehow, amazingly enough, kind of work out for us a little bit. Let's send that guy up the board. I don't really want to trade that guy. Although maybe I should be trading. Maybe I should have traded and then pushed. Ah, he's blockading my guys. Okay, but now I got an idea. I think he should have played... Well, here we're going to give him the onesie and the twosie. Now what I got? I got 4 pawns. Amazing. Check. Pushkin. I mean, maybe I should have been taking his bishop and then push. That looked pretty clear. Looks like I may have snookered him. Okay, that's check, but why not push on? Push on! Now, of course, I could have played queen takes queen, but this looks pretty good. Wow! What can I say? Anyway, Foxy Openings, one of our sponsors, helps with the editing. And he's got videos by, like, almost every... I mean, several Grandmasters. Let's see, who's here? Massey. Okay. 5-0. Rated. Losing proposition for sure, for sure. This is a guy who's very dangerous in the opening. Case in point. Got all these gambits worked out that are very dangerous. This, I do not know. This looks dangerous. I know I just got to get developed. That's what I know. Got to get developed. Now, I guess there was an interesting opportunity for me to sack a pawn and let him, like, say a castle. Bishop takes, pawn takes, knight takes, queen moves, knight takes c7, queen takes e7, queen takes d5. And in that scenario, he wins a pawn. But maybe I get the compensation with the opposite colors. But who knows? Discussion for another day. Here, though, I feel like if I get castled, like, boom, I am, like, so out of here. The only question is, should I be taking first? If I take, I have a feeling he'll trade bishops. When I take, he'll take with a queen. Let's just get castled. Safety first. That was actually a chapter in Petrosian's book, Safety First. He had a little bit of an opportunity there. I'm not sure I'm doing this so well. I mean, I still got my extra pawn, but small comfort. He's threatening checkmate, loosening up my king. That's good play. But now where is he going with this queen? Yeah, he's keeping an eye on my bishop. That's smart. Now, of course, being a pawn ahead, what's my goal? trade, trade, trade. Well, I don't really want to trade the dark squared bishops, to tell you the truth, so let's just chill, take a chill pill. Is it safe to run out over here? Now, some potential possibilities. I may actually take the pawn on c3 as long as I'm not allowing bishop takes pawn check. Oh, no, 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 no. Check. You were doing so good up to then, dude. Yeah, maybe instead of, you know what? I just realized I'm not getting any audio here on the, when they move. Okay, there you go. That sounds better. Okay. Jasper Jazig, rated game of 5-0. Ah, what?
Game started.
Oh, Zevich. Thanks for the game. Yeah, thank you, sir. Good game. Yeah, I mean, right up until c4. And maybe bishop, maybe the bishop should have gone to, what am I thinking? Maybe the bishop should have gone to, d6. That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm trying to think. So let's see what's going to happen in this game. White has a little more space, but, you know, it's a game. It is a game. Yeah, this is an interesting move. I've played this kind of idea before. And the idea is to try and provoke an endgame. Now, though, the problem is if I go a5, he's got a4. But this looks exciting. Can I do this? Live to tell the tale. The d6 square with the trade of the dark squared bishops is a bit sensitive. Another idea would have been rook to c1. But this looks like it might get more to the point with the d6 square. Wow. Okay. Well, I thought on that. I see. Okay, some complications.
Check.
Tricky guy. Should we just take the pawn? Trade queens, take the pawn? Why not? And be happy. Are we being too greedy here? Probably. But a couple extra pawns on the queen side, not a bad thing, I hope. Now what I'd really like is to get my king up and my rook over. There you go. Get the king up and rook over. Now we got to be careful about trading too fast. We don't want him, like if knight takes, bishop, rook takes, and then my d pawn is hard to defend. King can help out. In this case, no choice. No choice. Well, let's get these rooks to work. So now we have what's called a connected passed pawn, but we also have a pawn that he's blockading very nicely. So it's not so easy to break down the blockade here. But I think we got to try and trade this guy. Once we get rid of that guy, we've gone a long way towards breaking the blockade. Now we've got to watch out for tactics. Tactics, tactics, tactics. Always got to watch for tactics. As Anatoly said once to me, no matter how well you play strategically, at some point there's a tactical crescendo. Pedal to the metal. Okay, we're okay on time here. Let's go ahead and trade some wood. Check. Oh, what am I doing? Duh! I thought he was going to play rook d7. Okay. Now we can play this guy. Yeah, it's starting to get a little late in the day. And that b pawn has big ambition.
Black challenge.
Good game. Okay, so Massey's challenging me again. How are we doing here?
Challenge.
And Jasper Zig one more game. Okay, I'll play Massey one more game then, and I think we'll, and then maybe we'll do the presentation. I forget what he plays against d4. Okay. Let's play this. I'm not sure about f3. There's something here about trying to play a3. Okay, not liking what I did there. Not impressed with what I've done here. Not impressed at all. But hopefully it'll get better. I think I missed the moment there. I should have played f4 last move. Let him take on h3, but then I would have been taken on h5 twice. I missed the f4 moment. But life goes on. Life goes on, so we hope.
Server announcement. Check.
Now, its only hope here is that we have a little better coordination, but we probably just messed it up there a bit with that, because now we got to trade these. That feels like it's pushing the envelope. If I take here, I'm attacking his queen, and I pocketed a rook. So it feels like that should work out for me. g6 pawn feels a little bit tender. He's got the bishop check, but there we're going to slide in the corner. Okay. And now g6 is very tender. And because the queen has the obligation to keep an eye on the knight, not so easy for him to bring the queen across. But the real apple of my eye would be a little rook lift. Rook f3 to h3. Or knight f4 and then penetrate to g6 with the knight. So yeah, now I think we're getting to his king side at this point, I think.
Incoming challenge.
Okay, Jasper Zig. I think we did one game already. I'm going to do a presentation on the bishop pair. Please stay. And, you know, then if you're up first, we'll play. Okay? So we're going to /open. And we're going to do our little presentation part of the show. Let's see. So one of the things that I like is we can go to View, My Profile, and here you have General and Games. Games, we have our most recent games, so you can see the games that we just played right here up at the top. Okay, and then we have our game library. So you can have your own game library, holds up to 400 games. And here we can see previous presentations that we've done. Okay, we did Rook Indians, and now we've been doing the bishop pair, working our way forward. And so we covered a couple of games on Karpov. We covered a couple of Karpov-Kamsky games where Kamsky was white. Last week we also looked at some Kramnik games. Now today we're going to look at some Grandmasters. Not world champions, but still great players with great technique. The first is Grandmaster Anthony Miles. Was England's first Grandmaster, and you know, before Nigel Short he was clearly their #1 player for quite some time. Here's a game he's playing against Lee Zunian, and starts out as nothing too spectacular. The Queen's Gambit with Bishop f4. I think Miles and Raymond Keane won some very nice games using this as a change of pace from the usual Bishop g5. But you can see Black's playing very solid. And after takes, pawn to a3, trades on c4, and Black seems to follow a policy of exchanging here. Okay, and now Queen takes. So this to me was the first somewhat interesting point. Sometimes take with the king and then put the king on e2 once the queens are off. This is considered a queenless middle game. And then that way this other rook can come over to d1 and the a rook can come to c1. Miles sees a different light. And by the way, in this kind of symmetrical QGD, there were a number of games played between Botvinnik as white and Petrosian in their World Championship matches, and also, I think, probably a game or two with Petrosian and Spassky. But he takes with the rook. And now again, I might expect king up to e2, thinking queens are off, a few more trades, you're in an endgame. But Miles brings the bishop back and castles kingside. Now, the downside to Miles' setup is that his queenside is a little bit not got so many defenders, but Black in this game just tries to trade pieces and make a draw, and he doesn't really try to exploit that. So now, knight takes, and you can see white secured the bishop pair. Now here you might think that the bishop would retreat to c2, but if the bishop retreats to c2, Black might be able to play bishop e4 and trade that bishop off. So of course, one of the rules we discussed when you have the bishop pair is you don't really want to trade them unless you're getting something in return, okay? So he holds on to the bishops. Black goes for the rook trade. I mean, there I might have thought about knight to a4, but then bishop e5 is probably okay because he doesn't have the follow with knight d7.
Check.
Anyway, Miles trades, but now notice Miles does not play rook to d1, because then after rook takes, bishop takes, knight to d3, voila! Black attacks the b2 pawn, attacks the dark squared bishop, and he's doing okay. He'll recoup the bishop pair. Instead, Miles plays with a little more subtlety and attacks the knight on c5. The rook defends the knight, and now knight back to contest the e4 square. Well, Black offers to trade, and knights and rooks, thinking that each trade gets him closer to a draw. But instead, rook takes, takes, and now Miles does a little evasion technique. Sun Tzu, evasion, knight to b3. The idea is that he wants to use the knight on e4 to play f3 with tempo. The knight comes back, and then there we have it. Another point that Steinitz made was to use your center pawns in such a way as to deprive the enemy knights of outpost. We've seen that in several games that we've looked at. And here you can see the f3 pawn takes away the e4 square. Well, now he trades. And now you truly do have two bishops against bishop and knight with flexible pawns on both sides of the board. Let's see how Miles handles this. Well, first he plays e4, gaining space in the center. Black plays f6. And now he taps the knight. Knight goes into b3. Bishop back. Notice that if black was able to play pawn to e5 followed by bishop e6, he would have a very nice light square blockade. Miles very cleverly does not allow that. Now the knight goes back. Now he's hoping to play the knight into c4 and tie white up a bit. But again, Miles is on the case. The pawn on b3 takes away the c4 square. Well, black plays e5. His plan now is to play bishop e6, pressure the pawn, and whatever the pawn does, he'll get control of the c4 square and put up very powerful resistance, blockade even, if you will. But Miles is on the tempo. So for example, if you played king f2, you'd be giving black that tempo to play bishop e6. So Miles instead tickles the knight, sends him back. The knight goes back. And now he brings the king up. Now you might argue that, look, Ron, he advanced these pawns and now he's got the d4 outpost. But the d4 is not a great outpost, because if the black knight invades, you can chop it and then play your king over, and very high probability you will just wind up surrounding and collecting the pawn on d4 because the black king is far away. So he plays bishop out, brings the king up, king over,
check,
check, king over, and king to c3. Okay, so now how to make progress? This is the question. Well, Miles plays h4 on this side, starts trying to gain space, and now a4, because at some point you have to open up. Now black has a tough choice to make. He can't push, that would just simply lose the pawn. If he exchanges, the target pawn on a6 is as far to the wing as possible and would need to be defended. So in the game, he lets it sit, but after bishop e6, Miles simply plays bishop up, and then pawn takes, and bishop to d3. Suddenly the pawn on b5 is in deep doodle. Basically, it's going lost. Well, he plays pawn takes first. The bishop is not to be distracted. He takes with the pawn. And then he plays pawn to b4 check, giving up the bishop, giving up the pawn. Well, now Miles gives up the bishop, but he gets something in return for it. He wins a pawn. Well, black's idea was that he puts pressure on b3, but Miles willingly offers an exchange of the light squared bishop. So here we see a good example of Miles giving up his bishop pair, but getting something in return. After king up, bishop down, takes, king takes, and now we have a very advantageous bishop versus knight ending. So this is a great example of Miles giving up his bishop pair, but then getting something else. A pawn up bishop versus knight ending. Now, why is this so good for white? Well, one, he's got an outside pass pawn, and two, he's got the bishop, which, as we will see, can operate on both sides of the board, whereas the knight pretty much has to go one way or the other. Let's see what happens. Knight down. Trying to come over here to the king side, harass the pawns. Miles starts moving up the board. Knight over, attacking the e4 pawn.
check,
Check. And now it appears black will gain a pawn. His king is attacking the bishop. His knight is attacking the e4 pawn. But Miles pulls the bishop back, black collects a pawn, and then the king pops in. Now notice that Miles' choice of retreat squares when he retreated the bishop took knight c3 check off the table. Otherwise the king would have to stay close to his pawn. So now the double attack on the e5 pawn and the knight allows Miles to recoup the pawn that he let black have. So now king takes. So now we've gone back to the universe where white is a pawn ahead, and his king has now penetrated to the 5th rank.
Check.
Well, the knight checks, king drops back, and so now you can see the king is going to try to penetrate on the king side. Knight back. It looks like, given a chance, he wants to go back here and set up a little bit of a barricade and keep the black king out. Miles is on the case. He penetrates immediately with the king. When the knight hops back out, very nice move, bishop back. King up, and then bishop to f2. Beautiful play. So here we can see the bishop covers the e3, d4 squares from the knight, also can support the pawn, keeps the black king off of c5, and guards the h-pawn. So this is a great example of the bishop working on both sides of the board, whereas the knight is just kind of over on the king's side trying to hold things back. Well, king to d5. He wants to be close in case that pawn starts to run up the board on the b file. But now Miles fires in with the king. King back. And again, deeper penetration with the king. And the poor knight can't stop the white king from penetrating. The h7 pawn is now under siege. And now he's attacking both pawns. And notice, very important to keep in mind when you're playing bishop in games, is what color is your rook pawn. In this case, the bishop and the rook pawn are the same color as the queening square, so there's no problem with some kind of miracle save draw. So let's see what happens now. Now the g pawn is under fire. Well, he looks to liquidate. But another point, when you're ahead and winning, in general, you do not want to exchange pawns. Every pawn black is able to trade gets him a step closer to a possible draw. So h5 keeps the pawns on the board, and now he threatens king up, knight moves, and king takes pawn on h6. Well, black tries to play g3. Some idea, some hope of playing pawn up, bishop moves, and then knight going after the g-pawn. Miles, very interesting move, g3. Just stops the advance of the pawn. Knight goes back, and now, again, exchanging one advantage for another, is a sign of good technique. Miles could play b6, but instead he seizes the opportunity to grab this pawn. Now he's got an h-pawn all the way on the other side of the board from both the black king and the knight. Now again, knights are tricky pieces. You want to be careful where you go. Very important to note, Miles does not put the king on g7, but instead he goes to g6. Whoa. Knight comes back, pawn goes up the board, knight goes. Now notice, he could push the pawn and let him fork. Instead, he taps the knight. Very classy. Delayed gratification. Okay? The knight goes back to stop. Now, for example, if king d6, you might have a snazzy move like bishop to c5 check. If king takes bishop, king takes knight. If knight takes, you probably have h7. Well, the knight goes back. Last gasp. Try and stop. Bishop fires in. Attacks the poor knight. Where can the knight go? If the knight comes back, push the pawn. Knight goes to h7. And there you have it. The king and bishop combine to trap the knight. The knight has no move. Black resigned. So, beautiful textbook example of play with the bishop pair. And again, also, we discussed that sometimes you can design your openings in such a way to try and get the bishop pair out of the opening. So, beautiful game by Britain's first Grandmaster, Tony Miles. Now, this is a game I very much like. So, Miguel Illascasas, I think Zevich said he's from Spain, Catalonia. So Illascasas, Miguel, does some nice work for ICC over in Spain. and some instructional material and so forth. Here's a game where he's white against Peter Leko. Peter Leko was a young Hungarian talent. Now he's an older Hungarian talent, does commentary on one of the chess playing sites. And at one time he was considered a potential world champion challenger. In fact, he played a match with Kramnik, and it was a very tight match. And finally, I think he lost in overtime, game 16 or 18 or something. But here's a game where Illuskases is white. Looks like it was a Mroxy bind. White has the bishop pair. White has more space. But the way he executed this to me was absolutely beautiful. First, you can see black has pressure on the b2 pawn. So he goes 2 squares, attacks the knight, offers a trade of rooks. Now white, after takes, on rook check, would have to play bishop f1. I think that probably was black's best chance to complicate, but he probably didn't like the white rook check coming in from behind to check him. So in the game, he backed up with the knight and threatens the pawn on b4. What to do? Very calm. Bishop back to e1, very patient. Now pluses and minuses. The knight is attacking the pawn, but the knight is also a little bit, as we say, on the edge of the board.
Check.
Well, bishop check looks nice, but that just slides over with the king. And of course, we don't mind bringing the king up because we're in the endgame now, not the middle game. h5. Well, bishop to d7. Beautiful. King up, and then rook down, semi-forcing the exchange of rooks. I mean, what's black's choice? Well, black's choice would be to play rook to a7. And then his knight is pretty trapped. Not a happy story. So he trades. Well, he actually goes to b8. That way, if you trade, you have to bring the knight back into the game. But now, white brings the king up. He taps the h2 pawn. Now, when I first saw this game, I was thinking, well, he might play h3 to be able to play g4 later. But instead, he played more clever. He played check and then pawn to h4. And that seemed a little strange to me because I'm like, why would he create a potential target for this bishop one day? Like if you're going to try to get your king up. But he has a clear plan. And let's see what it is. After the king comes back, he trades rooks. He touches the b-pawn. The b-pawn has to move. Goes to b6. And now check. And here we see his plan. Again, remember we said you don't trade your bishops unless you're getting something in return. And so what he does here is he forces the trade of bishops by attacking the b6 pawn. And after the trade of bishops, what did he get in return? He got a highly favorable bishop versus knight ending where the black knight is captive to the bishop. And he's got a very simple plan here. The simple plan is king over, up, up, munch. Okay? So again, great example of trading off your bishop pair to get something else in return. Well, the king starts coming across. But now, remember back when he played the pawn up to h4? We now see the point because he plays pawn to g4. So pawn to g4, what does it do? Well, black has a choice. If he exchanges after pawn takes, white will have a potential passed h-pawn, which means his king will never be able to leave the arena. So he comes to the king side, but now after takes, this is not a pleasant choice either because this pawn on h5 is a perpetual target for this bishop. So that means the black king still is not able to leave the king side unless he's willing to, let his h5 pawn go. So white continues with his plan of bringing the king. Black has to keep the king out, but what does that do? That's right. That puts the pawn on a light square where the white bishop can observe it. So Illuskases advances. King comes back to the king side. And now, a little quiet move, bishop to b7. King back. And he locks him, puts him on lockdown. And he goes king up. Now, suppose the king had come across. If the king goes to e8, you could play bishop c6 check and force a winning king ending After knight takes, pawn takes, king d8, king d5, king c7, king e6. When he takes on c6, you take on e7, and white's like 4 moves ahead in that ending. So, Lecco keeps his king on the king side, but now bishop to c6. Lecco's idea was that he plays knight back to a6 to attack the b4 pawn. If you drop your king back, the knight can go to c7, and he's hanging on. How are you going to get in? But instead, Illuskasis shows a little artistic touch here. He takes the pawn. Well, if black retreats the knight, it's just hopeless. So, he coops the pawn. But now, the king drops back, and we can start to see the king and knight dominate, the king and bishop dominate the black knight.
Check.
The only move is check. Now here, when I first saw this game, I thought he was going to play king b3, knight c1, king b2, and trap the knight that way. Instead, he saw a different vision. He played king to b2, forced the knight back up to b4, and after king to b3, you can see the poor knight is trapped. Beautiful domination theme, very much like the Miles game, where the king and bishop trapped the poor knight. You can see these 2 squares are covered by the king. This square is covered by the bishop, covered by the bishop, covered by the bishop and pawn. And on knight takes, you just play pawn takes. So, beautiful example of bishop versus knight. And let's see our last game for today. Will be a Bulgarian player that relocated, I think, to Holland, and has done some excellent theoretical work, plays the bishop's opening among other things. So we get a double treat here. We get a bishop's opening from Tiviakov plus a textbook game with the bishop pair. Now again, this is the quiet version of the Italian or bishop's opening, if you will. And now notice he plays queen e2. He doesn't want to allow pawn takes, and the queen trade. Castles, the early pin, pawn takes, queen up, knight back. Now that he knows where black lives, he's got possibilities of knight to g4. Tiviakov is great at constantly introducing new wrinkles in the bishop's opening. h6. I have to say I'm not thrilled with what black does here, because he starts to loosen up his king side. This is very aggressive, and white has not even castled. So I just don't feel like this should work out well for him. Well, bishop back. King up. Brings the other knight. Offers to trade. And here's one of the moves that Tiviakov, probably more than anyone else, has patented. This is obviously a nice diagonal for the light-squared bishops. Tiviakov pulls his bishop back to c2. Why would you hide your bishop behind the pawn? Well, he is X-raying the enemy king. And good players don't like to allow X-rays. Not that they see all the possibilities, not that they see when it'll come into play, but they just know it will. And as you will see later in this game, this X-ray becomes an important factor. Also, Tiviakov has kingside attacking ambitions, and so he wants to keep the bishops on the board. Let's see what happens. Rook over. He brings the knight. Now, of course, anticipating that white might castle queenside, black starts to expand on this side. But now the knight, first pawn up. Very nice. Well, of course, black does not want to allow the open h-file, so he pushes. But I really like this next move. Pawn to h5. What that does is it allows the bishop to regain access. Okay, and it also cuts off the g4 pawn support. Nice multi-purpose move. With the h5 move, he gains more territory for his rook and his bishop. Now, of course, that pawn is potentially exposed as well. There's 2 sides to a coin. But we can see that this bishop, there's a lot of meat on this diagonal. Well, what does black do? Starts getting out of the way. But now this knight comes forward, and he takes it. Why does he take it? Well, black had to deal with the threat of knight to d5. And then if bishop takes knight, pawn takes, discovered check from that hidden c2 bishop. Black also was threatened with simply knight takes g4, collecting. So he figured best to remove it. So yes, that solves the problems of knight takes g4 or knight to d5, but it does give up the bishop pair. Queen takes. Well, queen to c5, offering to trade queens. But now, very nice move, knight back to f1. If you trade queens, as my friend Sailor likes to say, white has the replacement knight coming. He'll take with the knight, and then he's got another knight that could go into f5 or d5. He goes bishop c4. Bishop h4, tickling the rook. Now f6. And castle's queenside. Castle's queenside is a very clever move. It threatens rook takes knight check, removing the guard. After rook takes rook, queen takes queen on c5. So what he's really trying to do, he's really trying to encourage him to trade queens. He plays rook up. That way rook takes knight on d7 is not with check. But now rook to d5, fantastic move. If you play bishop takes, pawn takes is check, followed by pawn takes knight. Very nice. Well, he runs away with the queen. But now b3, and the bishop is trapped. You either take the knight, or you take the rook. But again, if you take the rook, pawn takes, and when the king moves, pawn takes knight, and white's collected 2 pieces for a rook. Plus, he's opened up this gorgeous diagonal. So, again, lesser of a couple evils, he gives up the second bishop. So now we have a middle game where white has 2 bishops, a lot of pawns on both sides of the board, and black has the knight pair. Well, pawn to b4. That's logical. He wants to eliminate this pawn and then get the d4 square for his knight. Tivikov says, fine, while you're doing that, I'm going to double down the d-file. Drops his king back, pawn to c4, and I have to say, when I first saw this game, the future for this bishop does not look so cheery. Whereas black, on the other hand, has this monster knight that just sunk in there in the center of the board. Beautiful outpost. He may even look to reinforce that bad boy with a move like c5. Then how will you ever get rid of it? But Tivikov says, no problem, let's sacrifice the exchange. So what did he get for the exchange? Well, he got a pawn. Don't forget he's got the bishop pair now, and he's really opened things up for the bishop pair. And the black pawn structure is kind of scraggly looking. So he's really only sacrificed like half a pawn because he does have the bishop pair, which is worth a half a point, according to Kasparov. Anyway, queen up, bishop back. That tickles the pawn on c7. Rook over, and now pawn to c5. Suddenly, you can see this pawn is under attack. This bishop has possibilities of snaking into the game. Suddenly, this bishop on c2 that looked so terrible 5 moves ago is suddenly back in action. Well, kicking the rook. The rook comes over. Why this square instead of d6, which looked natural? Well, from f5, he keeps pressure on f6, and he keeps 3 hits, so the knight can't go to e5 so easily. He goes rook e8. Perhaps he should have played a5, because now Tivikov takes a timeout and snips another pawn. So now it's official. He's got a bishop, 2 pawns for the rook, 5 points for 5, but he's also got the bishop pair. Well, knight to e5. But the real problem is one of coordination. Black doesn't really have a plan. He doesn't really have good open files for his rooks to function, and his king is very exposed. White's next step is he wants to orchestrate the f4 advance and push black back. But he's very patient. Watch how patient he is. Bishop up. King up. King up. This is interesting what he does here. Now he advances the f-pawn. Notice after he takes and takes that it is guarded. And he's got 3 tied down. Pawn, rook, queen, guarding the c5 knight. So not so easy for him to run over to the open file. Although he tries, thinking about coming in queen to g2. But now he hides the king. He gives more protection to the e5 knight. Drops back with the bishop. Now we see the rook on f5. Also guards the f pawn. And bishop relocation. There's a lot of meat on this dark square diagonal. All you got to do is blast the knight out of the way to get to it. Well, he goes rook e6. And pawn to b4. And bing bada bing, bishop to b3. What a beautiful diagonal. Look at these two bishops. And again, keep in mind, this is the bishop that after pawn to c4 looked like it was buried alive on c2 with no hope of parole. And now look at this bad boy. It is raking this long diagonal, totally uncontested. Black has no one on his team to fight this guy with. Well, rook back. So you can see black has managed to try and hunker down on the dark squares, but white also has a dark square bishop and even a dark square battery. And now he starts using the pawns to ram the point home. Pawn up, knight back, boom, pawn to e5, blasting the position open. King safety. You can see the white king is over here far, far away from any of the black pieces, whereas the black king is about to have it rain down on him. Well, he plays pawn takes,
check,
rook takes check, and what to do. In the game, he takes with the knight and just gives back the exchange. But if he takes with the queen, pawn takes, and then pawn to e6, and this is just going to be murder on the diagonals. But after knight takes, bishop takes, recoups the exchange. And here, I think black resigned. But the typical finish would be something like rook takes, queen takes, pawn takes, and then you have a knight versus bishop ending like what we saw before. For example, if he goes here, and you go here, when he goes here, you could just push this guy up. When he comes over with the king, what could you do? You could play bishop d1, guard your pawn, but you could also go here. And when he takes this guy, you take this guy. And he's far, far away. Oh, he's got to get over there and guard that guy. Oh, wait a minute. He couldn't take that guy. Go back. Let's see. He can't take h5. You'll queen. So he's got to wait. How does he wait? No good waiting moves. He could go back, but then you just take. Anyway, black's going to be so far behind, and you're going to create a second pass pawn on this side. Pretty easy to win. So, beautiful game with the two bishop pair. And the way he blasted things open right here, when he built everything up very patiently and then just played pawn to e5. This pawn to e5 just totally blast open the diagonals for the bishop. Very patient, quiet, positional build-up, and a nice exchange sacrifice, by Tiviakov. Really exploited the bishop pair in the middle game. So, going to take a short restroom break, come right back, and then we can get back to playing. Let's see. Also on ICC, notice that there's a number of different things going on. Okay. You've got great coverage of some different events. You've got tournament coverage. So let's see. Window, new game board, and /open. Let's see what he's got. Good to see you, buddy.
game started.
Let's play e4. Zevich, good night. Okay. Thanks for dropping in, buddy. Hope you enjoyed. Tip Mag says hello. And Rehab wants to know if I want to become famous. Oh my goodness, no. No. Don't want to do that. We can leave that, I think, for debutards and such. So now, of course, this knight c3 is not considered particularly dangerous. In fact, I think Tiviakov himself wrote a book on the center counter. Oh, that was stupid. Oh, that was really stupid. I should have taken that thing when I had the chance. I should have totally should have taken the thing. Yeah, I should have taken the knight on c6 and double the pawns. Duh. Ay, 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 ay. He's asking me what I want to do with my knight. Good question. Well, I'm not thrilled with it, but let's hop back here.
Server announcement. That feels a little risky, but Check.
maybe bishop c8 was a play there.
Check.
Okay, how do we free my people? Free my people. There's some tricks with g4 trying to trap my knight. If he doesn't do anything, I'm just going to play bishop to b3 or something, get out of town. Okay, like I said, oh, we could just push the pawn, but we don't need any more heroics here. We just got to take care of things. Check. Is that the best? Yeah, why not? And then let's get this knight in the game. Let's get this puppy in the game. Get that guy in the game. Now I could see that guy going to e5 and then to d7 or g6. Now there's definitely some knight g6 action.
Check. 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 Black challenge.
Okay, good game, sir. Now we have a new player, 1456, Ivan 70. Okay, what the heck?
Started.
Oh, wait, is this a 10-minute game? Oh. Wait. Oh, what the heck? We played a game. 10-minute. Didn't realize it was 10-minute, but okay. I always forget whether we're supposed to play knight f6 first. It's funny, when I play white I feel like I have nothing, and when I play black I feel like I'm in trouble. Make up our mind, right? I don't know, is this too loose here, what I'm doing with this e5 move? I don't know. Crunks Lannister passed by only to say good night. Appreciate it, buddy. Always good to see you. So there's a good move. Okay, now if I take there, he can take there. I take there, he goes there. Then we can go there. We can go back there. Wherever we move the queen, he's got some tricks. It's a bit complicated for me. What about if we just trade knights? Oh, but then we got a little problem. A different kind of problem. Well, so does he. Other issues, if you will. Nobody said it would be easy. If they did, they lied. I mean, I guess it's fairly equal. I mean, I have solved my development problems. I wasn't crazy about trading on b3. Now what's going on? A little bit of tick and tack. I guess b6 was a move. Tough game. Tough game. Yeah, that's a nice touch. Touching my bishop. Back 'em up, baby. I gotta back it up. Not sure about this move, but actually bishop f3 was a move maybe that I should have been more afraid of. But we're not out of the woods yet here, are we? I was a little concerned about knight at a to c5. There might be some tricks with here. I think we're going to try to steal this and hope it works out okay for us. But actually, it's not so easy. He can do this and this. Darn it. It's never easy. Okay, so after all that, we'll have the bishop pair. But he's doing quite okay here, I have to say. I have to say he's doing quite okay here. Yeah, he's doing good here. Now he's got a very favorable rook and bishop opposite color situation.
Server announcement. Draw offered.
I mean, I offered him a draw, but now I'm going to take a pawn, and then I'm going to take h4 probably. And guy played great. Guy played very good.
Boycoming challenge.
Sorry about that, dude. Well, I mean, you could have taken the draw. I did offer the draw. But anyway, thanks for bopping in, and good to see Krunks Lannister pop by. And I guess we'll play Nezhmednov. So why did he play the center counter last time? Isn't he a Latvian Gambito kind of guy? I'm going to beat him to the punch with the F pawn. Yeah, F5, F4. Pretend like I'm playing the Latvian Gambit with an extra tempo. Uh-oh. This is a good variation he's playing. D5, Falkbeer counter Gambit. I actually once won a game with black against Mark Hebden like this. And I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. No idea. Ah, boy. Which is usually exactly how one gets into trouble. Not knowing what they're doing in the opening. And then playing sharp openings like this. Yep, that's usually the recipe for getting in trouble. This really does not look good. What is that? No, man. Castles. I mean, look, I'm not saying this is not going to work out for you, but castles and knight to g4 is like what I would be concerned about. This I am like so out of here. I'm gonna run, Forrest, run. I'm wondering on knight g4, my plan was to castle. As I said, I am like so out of here. Boom. Goodbye. See ya. But on knight g4, I was starting to have dreams about bishop to d4. I'm not worried about the h2 pawn. If he takes that, that'll open the h-file. Now I feel like his compensation has dissipated. Give him the h2 pawn. Let's save the bishop. Save the bishop. Well, if he doesn't take the pawn, I'm just going to give him das Boot. Now if he takes on d5, well, bishop b5 is an option. My real heart was to play knight takes d5. Let's stick to what we really want to do. We really wanted to do this. I guess I should expect b5 from him. That would be a Nezhmetnov type move, pawn to b5. Then if I take, he could take here. Nope, nope, nope. I want to keep this. Whoa, whoa! But that's a whole piece, dude. I mean, I know you want to do that, but that's a whole piece. And I was going to play bishop c3 to preserve my bishop. But that's a whole thingy. It's too much.
Incoming challenge.
Rated game of 5-0. Ivan 70. I think we played him before. Anyway,
Game started.
Not sure what happened there. Let's see. I guess this will be the last game for the evening. Appreciate everyone who joined in to hang out with us late at night. Oh yeah, someone last week played like this, and he was actually doing quite okay. So this is a bit uncertain. Yeah, maybe we should have checked when we had the moment. I'm assuming that on queen takes b2, I'll play bishop f4 and line these puppies up on the e-file. That's my assumption. Let's hope we are correct. That, on the other hand, is a trickier move. Okay, so bishop takes, queen takes, rook takes, pawn takes, rook takes, knight somewhere. Let's give it a whirl. This is what happens when you read too many tactics books, or maybe not enough. Now, truth be said, knight to c4 might have been an easier, simpler solution, less complicated. Get the knight in position right away might have been smoother. And this looks somewhat promising, I think. Yeah, I had a game against some 2400 player a few weeks ago. He played this setup for black. But here maybe black played f5 a little premature. Now if he takes my bishop, I take his. Of course we have a rook and knight, double rook and knight ending. Now of course there is that. Now the problem here is he has some annoying counterplay with the knight move. I don't want to back my bishop off. Let's keep our bishop in here so at least the knight can't go to b4, but now we got to watch out for tactics. I need a tempo to play pawn to a3, just so I stop any knight to b4 action. Actually, pawn to c4 would be the more aggressive approach. Okay. Now if I go here, he has that. So let's play this one first. Attack that. And then let's play this one. That stops the knight to b4. Although now he can play pawn to f4 and try for some bishop takes there. Still making trouble. Well, let's go ahead and take it. Yeah, a little bit of a dilemma there. My bishop doesn't function so well. Okay, time. Now, if we play c4 and kick his knight, we could have some rook c7 check action, for what it's worth. We could also potentially get our knight in. Very good, clever. He wants to trade those guys, but okay. Now let's get this guy in the game. Maybe knight e4 was better.
Check.
Now the question is, do we get rid of his bishop? Yeah, why not? Okay. Let's see where he goes with this knight. Yeah, we can push the knight back, hopefully. Try to get the king up. Notice knight f6, we have rook check. So it's kind of a little bit of a technical phase here. And pretty promising, I think. Yeah, the knight's getting squeezed just a touch here. I'm going to start bringing the king up to e3, maybe play pawn to b4. As we said, the bishop operates on both sides. Ooh, how's that for a move? Boom, hit that knight. Abuse that knight. Well, there we just got to take this. Oh no, don't get trapped. That was clever. He almost trapped us. Okay, we've got to free our rook.
Black forfeits on time.
And we just gave away our bishop and our advantage. Yeah, of course I need to play king f2, but then he goes rook over and rook there, so I kind of bungled that a little at the end. Clever move, giving up the knight. Okay, good game, sir. I'd like to thank ICC for sponsoring us. I'd like to thank Foxy Videos for helping out with the editing. And I'd like to, most of all, thank everybody who showed up and participated tonight. Okay, and we will see you next week. Same time. Thanks so much. And Ivan70 says, thanks for the games. Thank you, sir. Again, thanks to ICC for sponsoring us, Mr. Sandro for staying up late over in Italy, and see everyone next week. Thanks.